thing we have to fear is
in war,
fear itself.
There is no substitute for victory.
Let us never negotiate out of fear.
We stand undivided, forever united, fighting hand in hand for the liberty we've earned, for glory and honor, for our sons and daughters, ever mindful of the lessons we've learned. Let the torch of freedom burn.
Welcome to the intersection of faith and politics. This is WallBuilders Live with David Barton and Rick Green. Thanks for joining us today. We got a topic today that I think some people initially may say, that's not necessarily a topic I'm interested in. I'm not in prison. I don't know anybody that's in prison. But, David, this is not one to leave off of our radar. It affects everyone out there. It affects your pocketbook, and it affects you biblically as well.
It does, and it has to do with how we treat prisoners and what we do with prisoners once we incarcerate them. Once they've gone through the criminal justice process, what are we going to do with them, particularly those that are in there long term? And you don't necessarily lock them up and throw away the key. Now, you may throw away the key, but you don't forget about them if you do. So there are some things going that have specific, dramatic, economic, and human personnel impact. And it's a new way to approach prison reform, quite frankly. I'm part of a group, national group, that's called Right on Crime. There's about 70 of us that are involved with this. And it's relooking at the way we do criminal justice. And part of what we say here, and at the website rightoncrime.com, we talk about, as with any government program, the criminal justice system must be transparent and must include performance measures that hold it accountable for its results in protecting the public, lowering crime rates, reducing reoffending, collecting victim restitution, and conserving taxpayers' money. In other words, we can't just do what we've always done in crime. We should be having measurement, having metrics that measure things and tell us what's happening right and wrong. So among the folks that are part of this, I mean, it's really a really cool crowd. You got folks like Newt Gingrich and Asa Hutchinson, who's running for governor in Arkansas, but you got Attorney General Ed Meese, you got Pat Nolan out of the Justice Department, you got J.C. Watts, Ken Blackwell, person after person. About 70 of us are on this thing and saying, hey, let's relook at the metrics. And so as part of that, and requiring accountability of government, making it work and protecting the public, lowering crime rates, reducing reoffending, those are things that we should be looking at. And there's a lot of ways that work well that a lot of states are ignoring right now. And so we wanted to focus on one of those that is working really well, but it's just kind of politically incorrect, so people don't really talk about it. And that's the faith component in this. I mean, this is not a new aspect. 200 years ago, signed of the Declaration, Benjamin Rush did the first faith-based prison reform in America, and it brought tremendous results. And so that's one of the aspects that we should be looking at. And I met with a guy just this weekend. He was out of Folsom Prison, California. He was a gangbanger, and he had been a really violent guy. And now he's got this huge ministry to kids, keeping them out of gangs and out of prisons. And that's because of what faith did to turn him around. And now, rather than practicing the recidivism that's so common to prisons, this guy is now on the other side making sure people don't go in prisons. That's the kind of metrics you want to measure.
Yeah, this is a big issue, David. This is one that a lot of people kind of avoid. We try not to think about it. You know, I served on crim jury when I was at criminal jurisprudence in the House, and most people don't think about it the way that you guys are thinking about it. But that's what's going to bring about the reforms that are needed, and it's absolutely necessary. But there's some really good results from a couple of places that are doing what you're talking about, and we try to look at the fruit that actually comes from these ideas. And you do remember, it's probably been 6 years ago at our legislators conference, we had some guys come in and talk from a prison in Louisiana. Do you remember that? I do. And the guys came in, and you remember even just a couple of years ago, we had Warden Burl Kane come in from Angola prison. And he talked about what happened, but we had a warden from Oklahoma that came down and said, the problem with criminal justice now is we as wardens, we're not expected to perform results. So what we do is we take the worst criminals and we just pass them around between the other prisons, and when we get tired of a guy, we'll send them on. He says, if the legislature ever told us your job is dependent on reducing recidivism by 10% a year, he said, we would do things totally different. But it's just the status quo. We're just supposed to babysit these guys for 50 years or whatever, keep them out of public, but we're not looking at reducing rates or improving things.
And so we've heard at our legislative conference for a number of years from guys who are inside this, how that they got turned around both on the administration side and on the prison side. And faith has been a consistent element throughout that, whether it was Burl Cain, and by the way, to be in Angola, and Angola is really tough. You can't be in Angola unless you have a sentence of at least 50 years. So 50 years to life. These are the hardcore guys who know they're not going to get out in their lifetime. And yet they have built 7 churches inside that prison over there. And these guys say, we're in for life. So what we do is we get our seminary degrees, we become preachers, we understand how wrong it is what we did, we understand what we did, the Bible's real clear. We got to go get these other guys before they get out and do something stupid that puts them back in. And so these guys out of Angola are actually asking to be transferred to other prisons where they start churches in the prisons, and they take these younger criminals and they give them a different view, a different influence, give them a heart change. It's significant stuff. And you see the results in Angola, where that of all maximum security prisons, they're now the most peaceful prison in America. And it used to be that they had a murder every week in that prison. And it's been years since they've had one now. So it's a real turnaround, and that's what you should be measuring. What works? And if it works, let's do it. Let's do it elsewhere. And that's not what we've been doing for years. We just keep throwing money at it and keep throwing people away. And the thing I've objected to about the criminal justice system is in the Bible, criminal justice is about restitution.
That's right.
If you damage somebody's property, you're supposed to repay it. If you steal, you repay 2, 4, 5-fold. If you hurt someone physically, there were economic fines you pay. Well, people pay fines now, but it goes to the court. It goes to the states. Victims' rights, there's nothing in the way of restitution. Yeah. There's nothing to make people accountable for what they did by saying not only will you serve time, you've got to repay what you stole. You embezzled $400,000, you got to find a way to get it. And being in prison won't do it. You're going to have a job, and that job, the money you make, is going to go to repay what you stole. See, that's the kind of stuff the Bible is into, is restitution and victims' rights as well as criminal justice, and we haven't been doing any of that. And so we need to have concern for the families of those in prison. We need to have concern for the victims of those who have been hurt by those in prison. We need to have concern for the culture. We need to have concern for all aspects of this, and that's not what we've had.
Well, you mentioned the results, looking at the results, and there is another place we're getting results. It's at a prison in Texas, and one of the guys that is very passionate about this and been on this issue for years is our current state senator, Dan Patrick, likely to become lieutenant governor. Everybody expects him to win the election here in a few months here in Texas, and he's going to be with us when we come back from the break. So stay with us. State Senator Dan Patrick when we return right here on WallBuilders Live.
This is David Barton with another moment from America's history. Around 1790, the infamous Thomas Paine wrote his Age of Reason, attacking religion and Christianity. Interestingly, one of the strongest defenders against Paine's attack was Benjamin Franklin. In fact, he stiffly rebuked Paine and told him, "He that spits in the wind spits in his own face." Do you imagine any good would be done by this attack against religion? Think how great a portion of mankind consists of youth who have need of the motives of religion to restrain them from vice, to support their virtue. I would advise you not to attempt unchaining the tiger, but to burn this piece before it is seen by any other person. If men are so wicked with religion, what would they be if without it? Benjamin Franklin believed that the practice of religion was one of the greatest assets of American society.
For more information on God's hand in American history, contact WallBuilders at 1-800-8-REBUILD.
Let the torch of freedom burn.
Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us here on WallBuilders Live. Our guest today, currently Senator Dan Patrick, soon to be Lieutenant Governor of Texas. Dan Patrick, how you doing, sir? Good to have you on.
I'm great. Good to be with you all, and it's an exciting time. We're closing in on the election. It's been a long, long campaign.
Well, almost there, bro, almost there. And we saw this article about the Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary's program at Darrington, and David said, man, that's a passion of Dan Patrick's. Let's see if he's got time and can tell us a little bit about it. So we're thrilled to have you on to talk about it.
Well, thanks. And it is a passion, and I'm so excited about how God is working through this project. Let me give you a little quick background.
Sure.
We now have a fully accredited seminary in a Texas prison, the Darrington unit, which is south of Houston. We have 4 classes of 40 students each. They take the exact courses that anyone becoming a pastor would through the seminary in Fort Worth. And we're going to have our first graduates next spring. Now, this is only the second only second program like this in the nation. The first that has been around for 16 years is in Angola, Louisiana, in a very infamous prison known as Angola Prison in Angola, Louisiana. And in that prison, they have over 5,000 inmates, about 5,200.
And it's some of the toughest of the tough work.
Of the tough.
Yeah.
70%, to underscore that, are serving life. That means a very, very serious crime, murder, kidnapping, sexual assault, heinous crimes. 70% are serving life. They, in the last 14 years, have graduated over 440 pastors. And that prison has gone from the most violent prison in America 20 years ago to the least violent maximum security prison in America. And it's an amazing place where God has changed the culture of the prison by changing the character of men through changing their heart through the word of Jesus Christ. And that's what we are copying in Texas. And I began this along with a Democrat and a Republican working together on this. John Whitmire, chairman of the Criminal Justice Committee. I serve on criminal justice. And about 4 years ago, I guess it's been, I was invited by the warden to go see their program. I asked John to join me. We went and stayed the weekend in the prison, and we came back. We raised $150,000 of private funds because you have to have an accredited library for a seminary. There are no tax dollars involved. That way it keeps the ACLU out of it. And we're already seeing a change in the Darrington unit.
Wow. Man, amazing. Now, if you would speak first to just the issue of not forgetting these folks in prison, because sometimes I think we just write that off. We don't want to deal with it. We don't want to think about it. But this is a very, very important ministry. I mean, even Jesus said, you visit me in prison. You visited me there. How important is it to get people to just simply be willing to think about this and be willing to help?
Well, if you consider this fact, that we shouldn't give up on anyone if there's a possibility of turning their lives around. And even those who are sentenced to life, if they're going to be in that prison, we want it to be the safest environment for our prison employees, the guards, and the other inmates. So there are some practical matters here. There's another practical matter, Rick, and that is that every year in Texas, we have almost 160,000 people in 105 prisons in Texas. And every year we parole about 70,000 people, or they've ended their sentence, or they've gotten out early. But 70,000 people get out every year. Now, who do we want coming back to our communities? Do we want people who have found God and truly want to turn their lives around when they come back into our communities and on our streets for our sake as well as their sake? Or do we want, and our population is 90% men, so I'm just going to say men for now, or do we want those men coming back into our communities to commit more crimes because that's the only thing they know?
Yeah, it's amazingly powerful. We got to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Senator Dan Patrick is our guest. Stay with us right here on WallBuilders Live.
This is David Barton with another moment from America's history. Although education has remained an emphasis in America for nearly 200 years, what has changed the most over that period of time is the philosophy of education. For example, while religion finds no place of refuge in our schools today, such was not the case at the time of our founding fathers. In fact, when the Delaware Indian chiefs brought their youth to be trained in America's schools, on June the 12th, 1779, George Washington told them, "You do well to wish to learn our arts and our way of life, and above all, the religion of Jesus Christ. These will make you a greater and happier people than you are. Congress will do everything they can to assist you in this wise intention." According to George Washington, what students learned above all in American education at the time of the Founding Fathers was the religion of Jesus Christ.
For more information on God's hand in American history, contact WallBuilders at 1-800-8-REBUILD.
let the torch of freedom burn.
Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us here on WallBuilders Live. Our guest today, Senator Dan Patrick. We're talking about the prison ministry in a prison in Texas called Darrington, where now there's actually a seminary, and just amazing testimonials coming out of here. But it really does affect everyone. What can folks at home do if they hear about this and want to be a part of it, either donating to this particular program or helping to get it started at another prison in the state? What can they do?
Well, and that's our goal. We've had people from all over the nation now come to Texas to see our seminary. And again, it's we have 4 classes, 40 inmates each. By the way, we have zero tolerance. If you break any of the prison rules, you're out of the program. We've only lost 1 in 4 years, so it's pretty remarkable. And there was an article written in the Fort Worth Star-Telegram a few months ago talking about the miracle at Darrington, how things are really changing. In Angola prison in Louisiana, they don't have any gang. They don't allow cursing. Can you imagine that? In a prison where you have almost 4,000 people serving life, there's no cursing.
Wow.
Now, I did say to the warden, I said, I can't believe every inmate buys into the program. And he said, no. He said about 2/3 do, and the 1/3 are kind of in their own prison within a prison. But those men who are going to be there for a long time, that is their life, and they want the best life possible. In our Texas prison, our inmates in the pastor program, they're serving long sentences. So this is not like a get-out-of-jail-free card. This is for people who are going to be there a long time because they have such credibility with new inmates coming in. And we want to change the lives of the new inmates coming in. Now, how can people help? This all began with a movie that I made called The Heart of Texas in 2009. It was I know you've seen it. It was given an award as the best film made in Texas that year. It's a story about forgiveness. It's a great Christian story, and I take no credit for it except God gave me the opportunity to make it. It's a true story, and that's the movie that the warden in Louisiana saw, and then he found out I was a legislator, and he said, I've been trying to get someone in Texas to see what we're doing over here across the state line in Louisiana for a decade, and why don't you come? You have a heart for the Lord. So that's how all this started. So this little movie called The Heart of Texas is the way people can help. Go to heartoftexasfoundation.org so you can learn about the program, because heartoftexasfoundation.org is overseas. We have to raise a significant amount of money each year because we have to pay the professors and continue growing the program. We want to be in every prison in the state. We want to expand it nationally and see a real revival. And so if you go to heartoftexasfoundation.org, you can order a movie, you can make a donation, and that all goes to the prison ministry. And the one last thing I'll say about the reason the movie has such impact in our prisons, and we didn't make it to be a prison movie. As you know, it's just a story about forgiveness. But where do people need forgiveness? If you've been convicted of a crime, no matter what crime that is, you very often think the victim will never forgive you. Your own family, if you have a family, will not forgive you, and you can't forgive yourself. And so you can never understand forgiveness if you understand that Jesus died on the cross to forgive us for our sins. And that's why this movie is powerful, because it's a story of a black family and a white family, and there's a lot of inmates in prison where there's been white on black or black on white crime, or various groups that in society for whatever reason that crime has been committed. And so they go in thinking this black man's not going to forgive me, or this white man's not going to forgive me, or this brown man's not going to forgive me. And they see a movie about a black family and a white family who had this incredible moment of forgiveness in one of the worst tragedies that this little town could ever experience. And so it speaks to the prisoners, and that's what spoke to the warden, and that's how this all began, and how we got invited over there and how we began the seminary. So I'm very excited about it. Again, God just used me to be the networker. I raised some money to make the movie, and then he chose me to go over to Louisiana and be the networker again with my Democrat chairman, John Whitmire, and I give him credit. People sometimes think that, as parties we can never constructively get anything done. Well, we can, and when you put God in the middle, suddenly a Democrat and a Republican can find a good answer to a problem.
Well, it's powerful, and it's easy to help, folks. You can go to heartoftexasfoundation.org. It's also it's 501c3, so it's a nonprofit organization. It's tax-deductible donation. And get the videos, show them at church. You know, that's another good thing, Senator, just getting churches involved, right?
Yes, we take, in fact, I think on the website, I've been so busy on the campaign trail, I may have not seen the latest update on the website, but we take churches and pastors to Angola prison and to Darrington for a tour all of the time. And if you go to Angola with us, usually you spend a night in prison overnight. You really get a chance to see prison life and see what's happening over there because we need churches to kind of adopt us. You know, a lot of people, as you know, Rick, from your background, will write a check one time, but when you're doing something that's ongoing and you want to grow it, you need consistent, steady donors. And so some of our best supporters for the ministry are the churches. And so we like to have, you know, men's group, women's groups, you know, pastors, associate pastors, whomever would like to come over and see the program and say, gosh, this is something our church can support. And that's really important. And every church has permission to play our film. We don't charge churches to play the film. Even if you're not involved in the Heart of Texas ministry, just watching the film will change your life. It's had a big impact on my life because it's one of the most incredible stories. It's why it won all the awards. It wasn't the filmmaking. It was the story, and it was God's story, and it was a story of forgiveness.
It affects every single one of us, folks. You need to go check out the website, donate, get involved, get your church involved, and let's get this in more prisons. It's amazing the stories that are coming out of there and the testimonials. Senator, God bless you, brother. Appreciate you coming on and telling us about it. We'll help to get the word out, and hopefully continue to celebrate it.
Thank you.
Back in a moment with David Barton. Have you ever wanted to learn more about the United States Constitution but just felt like, man, the classes are boring, or it's just that old language from 200 years ago, or I don't know where to start? People want to know, but it gets frustrating because you don't know where to look for truth about the Constitution either. Well, we've got a special program for you available now called Constitution Alive with David Barton and Rick Green, and it's actually a teaching done on the Constitution at Independence Hall in the very room where the Constitution was framed. We take you both to Philadelphia, the cradle of liberty in Independence Hall, and to the WallBuilders Library, where David Barton brings the history to life to teach the original intent of our founding fathers. We call it the Quick Start Guide to the Constitution because in just a few hours through these videos, you will learn the Citizen's Guide to America's Constitution. You'll learn what you need to do to help save our constitutional republic. It's fun, it's entertaining, and it's going to inspire you to do your part to preserve freedom for future generations. It's called Constitution Alive with David Barton and Rick Green. You can find out more information on our website now at wallbuilders.com.
Let the torch of freedom burn.
Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us here on WallBuilders Live. Thanks to State Senator Dan Patrick for being with us today as well. David, those are true results. So how do we expand that to other prisons?
Well, you know, one of the things that needs to be pointed out in addition to what we've talked about with these two examples with Burl Cain, and by the way, Dan mentioned that they don't custody the prison. It's really funny because not only did not custody the prison, it was the inmates who came to Warden Cain and said, hey, you got to get the guards to stop cussing. We're trying our best to stop cussing here, but you got to get the guards to stop cussing. And so it was the inmates who went and asked the warden to get the guards under control on language. And, you know, what a remarkable thing that is, but that shows the indication of the type of change they've had there. When you look at all government prisons, whether they're state-run or federal-run or local-run, whatever, the recidivism rate is 77%. That means that once a guy's released, within 3 years, 77% of those guys that are released will commit a crime that puts them right back in prison. So repeat habitual offenders, 77%. But we've got about a dozen states now who are doing these faith-based prisons, and the recidivism rate is only 8%. Now, you consider 77% recidivism versus 8%, that's a 90% improvement over the 77%. Now, think how much that means economically, but also what it means in human capital. Because 90% of the kids of prisoners will end up in prison. Well, if you can keep those guys out of prison and keep them home, now you're reducing the cycle of crime, the family cycle of crime that goes on. You're also getting these guys back into a job where they can be productive, One of the things that they learn about in prison is that they need to reconcile with victims, and they need to go make restitution. I mean, those are biblical teachings. And so you're getting guys that are getting their heads screwed on right in prison. They're going through and getting a seminary degree. They're learning what's right and wrong. The Bible is not stuff they grew up with by and large. And so they're getting their life pointed in the right direction. And it just makes a huge difference. And it's something that needs to be done in every single state. And, you know, Dan gave us the website there with Heart of Texas, and that's a good place for people to go. Get your own state legislator involved in this. It means a savings in tax dollars and human capital, less victims, more biblical justice in the sense of restitution and victims' rights. I mean, this is just good all the way around. Or you can go to rightoncrime.com and also see how that program works and getting metrics that you can measure in state prisons and county prisons and local prisons.
And even those that are not people of faith should see the great benefits to doing this in prisons across the country, because it's going to save them tax dollars and it's going to make them safer.
Well, you know, a lot of people that are not of faith have crimes committed against them. Why wouldn't they want restitution? You know, and if the Bible teaches restitution and that'll help them be repaid for property crimes or economic crimes committed against them, why would they object to that? And so this is something that benefits every person, whether you're religious or not. It benefits you by reducing tax dollars, reducing the likelihood you'll be a victim of crime, and if you are a victim of crime, helping you get some restitution and rights back.
Amen. Hey, good stuff. Really good stuff. Appreciate State Senator Dan Patrick for joining us today for the program. Take those action steps, folks. You can make a difference in your community as well, just by paying attention to what your legislators are doing on the issue of crime. I mean, it's a big deal. It affects your pocketbook, and it affects your life. Thanks for listening today to WallBuilders Live.
We stand undivided.